64th episode of CloudFocus Weekly for the first week of October 2011. This episode is titled All the Crazy Ones. CloudFocus Weekly is sponsored by Arkus, cloud computing experts. I'm your host, Jason Atwood, and joining me is co-host Justin Elstein. How are you doing?
A little somber.
This is going to be a little bit of a somber podcast. The title was in reference to one of the better ad campaigns that Apple ever put out. Was about the crazy ones and the different ones, and anyway, so we'll talk about our agenda. But we're going to talk about iCloud and iPhone 4S. We'll talk about Benioff being booted. And we got some Winter 12 coming up in literally a day and a half. But let's start with what is probably the news of the day, or as of last night. Steve Jobs, founder, inventor,
godfather
of Apple and other companies like Next and Pixar and things that have changed our life forever, died last night of whatever he was ailing of. I think is cancer.
Yes.
And it was extremely sad news. The social media world is alive and kicking.
I think it took Twitter down, did it not?
Did it?
I believe there were some fail whales.
Really?
I don't know if they still do the fail whale. I don't really go to twitter.com, but yeah. I think it took it down for at least a little bit. It was ironic, and I used that word having no real sense of what it actually means. Last night I was doing a walk for cancer, raised some money, did a walk for lymphoma and leukemia, and I get a text from my sister. Did you hear the news? It wasn't even like, did you hear Steve Jobs had passed away? It was, did you hear the news?
Right.
I was like, no. What's going on? She's like, look at every single thing that you would ever look at and just go back 20 minutes and just like Twitter, Facebook, just go look at it. I'm like, why don't you just tell me?
Yeah, you could have said Steve Jobs, R.I.P.
That's what she did.
She
was like, Steve Jobs passed away, and then of course it went with the really question mark, because I'm sitting there just getting a text from my sister, and you don't really know these days until things are completely confirmed that, because media is very different. It used to be back in the day when I was a young codger, that if something came along the wire, it was the truth, right?
If it didn't come across on MTV News when you were a kid, you didn't notice it.
Well, if Walter Cronkite didn't announce it on the nightly news,
Walter Cronkite was probably very dead
way before my time. Yeah. But if Dan Rather didn't announce it on the television that night, or if it didn't come across the AP Newswire on the radio, it wasn't true. Now we have all these different places to go and get news, and things happen like RIP this person, and then you find out they're not dead because someone just put it on Twitter, and then it went crazy. But this is I'm sad. I am saddened by it. I have had some interesting conversations with some friends of mine who called me crazy for being sad, and I said, well, not really. He has touched my life. I'm typing this email that I'm responding to you on a device that this man thought up in his head.
Right.
Later, I will be texting you during the Yankee game on that other device this man created in his head.
Right.
And by the way, and then I made sort of an outlandish statement that said, I believe this is just as relevant as a president passing away. And I caught some flack for that, but I believe it to be true. He has actually impacted my day-to-day life more than any president that I've lived through in my lifetime.
Yeah.
And has done so not just here in the United States, but all throughout the world.
Right.
Billions of people. So I caught some flack for that, but I stick by it as a statement that I believe to be true. And I am sad that this visionary and leader has passed away.
I was certainly caught a little bit. I knew he was sick, and I knew there was this. We got a lot of tweets, or I got a lot of people. People know I love Apple, and love Steve Jobs, and whatever. My wife refers to him in our household as my buddy Steve, because I do talk about him like he's a buddy. I'll watch every one of his keynotes. I pre-ordered his book. And I think what's interesting is, if for someone I've never met, I feel like I know this guy. I know this man, and it's because I follow a company that I love, and I use their products extensively. I've used their products, not that I want to pull the I was there when, but I've used their products forever. And since college, since my MacBook, my whatever. I'm trying to think of the thing, but I can't think of it. And I've defended them when they were when they went to the clones and they had all that stuff. I defended them, and so this is someone who came in and turned a company that I really loved around before he was back. Like, I still loved Apple, and he came and turned it around. So in a lot of, I guess, the pro Apple people, he's someone who has taken something that you loved and turned it back to something relevant. Not only something relevant, something groundbreaking. And I guess the thing that was interesting for me, just thinking about it last night. Oh, so side story, although relevant. You have been suggesting to me that I watch Breaking Bad.
I have.
I watched the first season.
Oh, the whole season?
Last night, yeah.
The whole season?
First season, 7 episodes.
You watched the whole season yesterday?
Well, no, in the last 2 days.
How great is it?
Well, let's keep that on the side. But it's about, no spoilers, it's about a guy who has cancer.
Yes.
Dying of cancer. So I'm watching at the moment that he is telling his family that he has cancer. And it's this very big, not telling him, he has to get outed, but he's talking about whether he should fight cancer or he should just not fight it, right? And there's this big scene. I don't know if you remember it. Anyway, it's a pretty emotional scene. I have a kid, he has a kid, he had a kid on the way, and so there's already a lot of emotional stuff going on with that scene, with your wife and your kids talking about whether you're going to fight cancer or not, and then it comes in the news of Steve Jobs dying. So I will say, I was hit both ways. One from a fictional character who I was kind of, getting into, and then one from a real person who just then died of cancer. And I said this to my wife, and maybe this maybe makes me one of the crazy ones too, but I am more upset and more taken back. I've had close friends, older people in our, people who were pseudo grandfathers who died in this last year, that it didn't strike me as hard. Like, this really struck me. So amazing to be struck as hard by someone who you have never met.
He's had the influence over your life, like none other. Where, I know people my age. I'm a little younger than you. I grew up, and as long as I can remember, there's been a computer in my house.
Right.
And the first computer that I ever used was a Mac.
Right.
I learned how to use computers using a Mac Classic,
right,
which is still in my parents' basement, by the way.
Yeah.
And I'm going to do something with it one day.
Yes.
Have the keyboard, have everything. But that's someone who's been prevalent in my life,
right,
and has revolutionized the way that we do things.
Right.
Right. It's like the person it's like Edison. This man invented something that did not exist, and you cannot imagine living your life without that thing. It's
a good analogy. I actually like the president one, because I was thinking about other people. If stars, like famous stars of mine, I know when people get crazy, will get very upset when like rock stars die.
Well, when Amy Winehouse passed away a couple months ago, I had this similar conversation with the same group of friends where I didn't actually care,
right?
And they sent out, email, R.I.P. Amy Winehouse, and my response was, who cares?
Right.
And I know that's not great.
It's a little harsh.
A little harsh.
Someone cares.
Someone cares, not me at that point.
Right.
I didn't listen to her music.
Right.
She didn't touch my life in any way.
Right.
And, we've lived through, passing of presidents. Ronald Reagan was the most recent one, where that's sad and that's a thing. But I thought that this was basically just as sad. I know he wasn't the president of the free world, but you know what? I don't have the Ronald Reagan phone in my hand all day long.
Right.
We're not sitting here with two Obama MacBook Pros, Pros. We're sitting here with his products.
And I think that's sort of the bigger thing, is that it's not that, it's two things I think that make it almost more relevant than presidents. One, first of all, presidents come and go, right? For the longest period of time, you have a president, Bill Clinton, 8 years, but it's only 8 years. Steve Jobs, more than 8 years. If you look at his entire, from starting Apple till whatever, yesterday, like his entire term, if you will, was massive. It was a 30-year term, right? And again, you're right. While Obama might pass Obamacare, and maybe that affects me in some ways, although still not sure how it affects me. Not going to get into politics. Or Bill Clinton does something, or George W. Bush does something. You're right. The immediate effect isn't. You feel, I think especially for, I don't want to go back to this Mac thing, but especially for Mac users, I think there's a
gravitas. There's a pride
in the product.
Right. There's a pride in being like, in my family, there's 5 of us. Right. My 2 parents and my 2 sisters. And, obviously, at some point, we all fled, and we were all using PCs and Dells or whatever. Right. Right? Because they were just better machines. Right. But then I went back. I said, I'm going back. I'm when I met you, actually.
I was like, I know that story.
Me. I went back. I went back and I bought an iMac, and then as soon as I bought an iMac, I bought a MacBook, and I had 2 Macs. And I got one by one all of my family members to convert to being Mac users, and they will never go back, ever. And there's a loyalty. Well, never. Ever. In the foreseeable future. There's a loyalty factor there. They have iPhones, my whole family. Right. They have iPads. They have MacBooks. There is a thing. There is something about
There's
this.
A connection.
It's not a cult, but it is. It's a family.
I think part of that's actually going to change, not because of Steve Jobs, but because part of the reason that made it a family was very much it was a small number.
They didn't have that 23% market share.
When we Mac users were 3% of the market share, there was a unitedness, like we are fighting against, we have the better product and we are fighting against the world. As silly as it seems. But now, when you literally look at those, and again, we just watched the keynote for the Apple keynote.
Yep, I just watched it last night.
The number one, like they put up the number, everything was their number one and number one. This is a company that used to be, number 10, not even in the space. So it's just stunning. And again, he did that. He did it with a lot of other people. A lot of people worked. I just want to one last thing. I think, sort of the ray of hope on top of this is that, and you brought up Edison. And my wife turned to me last night and said, that's a shame, there will never be another like him. Or who will take over. Or, we've lost someone who cannot be replaced. And as much as I think Steve Jobs is not replaceable in a lot of ways, there will always be someone, to come in and do great things. When great inventors have died before, or great people, Martin Luther King, again, Thomas Edison, Albert Einstein, whatever. There have been people who've come in and done great things in the future. So I left sort of as a positive note thinking last night, I'm very sad. I'm hoping that, and not for Apple's sake, and I don't care stock and all that, but like that the industry and that the innovation, we have people like Mark Benioff to be, I know this is a CloudFocus Weekly, we talk a lot about Salesforce, but like Mark Benioff is an incredible innovator, and he has taken some of that stuff, and he's taken some of the pieces. Mark Zuckerberg, incredible innovator. Like there are people who are going to keep coming up and innovating and doing great things. And so I just want to leave it on that positive. So I feel for his family. I feel for his real friends, the people who really knew him, and other people who really loved his product. It's a very sad day, or yesterday and today. So anyway, that's our moment of. You have a thought?
No, I was going to say let's talk about these products.
All right, let's talk about sort of the post.
We saw some keynote action from Apple. I watched it last night in its entirety.
Yep, me too. Yesterday.
Just a quick comment on the people. I thought they were all very, very good. They all did, for me, very well. I thought the new CEO, whose name I can't remember,
Cook, something,
whatever.
Yeah.
He did a fine job, I thought.
Okay.
I always like Schiller when he gets up there. He does a good job with the product stuff. Forstall is his name. He always does a good job with the mobile stuff. And I can't remember the other guy, like the hardware guy.
He was pretty bad.
He wasn't that great. He was
kept looking down.
A little forgettable, but I believe that they did a good job, and the CEO himself I thought did a nice job. He had a cadence about him. It was a little slow, but it worked, and he was able to sort of ad-lib a little bit, like throw some little one-line jokes, things like, and the iPhone, and we'll have more about that later, like some little things that got the audience to laugh. I thought they did an okay job with the keynote.
It is extremely hard to come up after really someone who has defined, again, let's get away from all the product stuff. Steve Jobs has defined the keynote. Like, people talk about the keynote and that presentation now in terms of how he does it. People copy him. Mark Benioff copies his style. Yeah. Mark Zuckerberg copied his style. So it's hard.
There are books written on this very topic. Steve Jobs, present like Steve Jobs.
Yeah.
Right?
He does not. I actually thought the CEO was pretty forgettable. I thought he was too slow. I don't think he had enough energy. And I also thought the presentation was a little too. When they do the numbering stuff, when they do the you have to pound through that stuff quickly. Like, we're great, our numbers are great, it's great. They did too many videos. Anyway, I mean, let's get to the products.
Yeah, well, once again, they did the whole iPhone 4 was great.
Yes, this is your thing.
Let's push that aside because this thing is so much
and
greater.
This thing looks exactly the same, and
it's just so much better.
It's so much better.
It's so much better.
And the outside, exactly the same.
It's what's inside.
It's all new. And, we talked about this. So
they're the masters of that.
The big disappointment for everybody is iPhone 5. Where is the iPhone 5? No one. I mean, we know when iPhone 5 starts. In fact, you came to me and said, "Is there going to be an iPhone 5?" And I put 1, 2, 3, 4 up on the board, and I'm like, "Yes, there will be a 5."
There was no iPhone 2. There was iPhone 3G. Then there was iPhone 3GS, which was iPhone 3. Then there's iPhone 4. Now this is iPhone 5.
Right.
It's iPhone 4S.
Well, no, this is not iPhone 5. This is iPhone. Just like 3S went to 4, there will be a 5.
Yeah, but for those of us who went from 3G to 3GS, both of us, that was our third iPhone.
Yeah. Well,
this
I'm
will
not
be
saying
my fifth iPhone.
But numbers and letters mean something in a product development. They mean something in like when you develop software. Point something, and they don't do point. They don't do iPhone 4.2.
They should have.
Well,
4.2.1.
They do iPhone. They add letters. That's basically saying it's the same form factor, but it's got other stuff in it. So if you look at 1, skip 2, 3G, right, which was basically for 3G, bringing in 3G.
There was no 2. 3G was 2.
Right. Then 3GS was same form factor, different speed inside.
2+. But
then 4 was a new form factor.
Right.
5 will be a new form factor. So that's what, anyway. It looks great. Really everything else is like camera, blah, 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 blah. The Siri thing is interesting.
The Siri thing is the most interesting thing.
How many times have you looked at your phone since and
10 times.
And gone, Siri, what's the weather like out
As soon as I was watching the keynote, and my girlfriend, I was at her house, I was sitting there at her computer watching the keynote, and she's sitting on the couch watching like America's Next Top Model or something.
Right.
And as soon as they start talking about Siri, I start just looking at her like, I need this now.
Right.
And she's like, why? I'm like, because I can look at my phone and tell me to remind me to do something for you when I get to your house.
Right.
How many times do you yell at me for forgetting to remind you? She tells me to remind her to do something, which is such a cop out.
Right.
Because really, remind yourself.
Right.
And then don't get mad at me when I don't.
I can blame Siri.
Right. I'll be like, Siri, when I get to my girlfriend's house, remind me to tell her to do X.
Right.
And that's going to be awesome.
That's going to be pretty.
That
cool.
alone is awesome. What I can't wait for is right now they have it integrated with all their apps, right? So Siri, you don't have to say Siri, look up the weather in San Francisco, or remind me when I get home to do something, or move my calendar event with Jason for podcasting from 11:30 to 12:30, and it'll check your calendar and do all that stuff. Awesome. I want it to shoot things into other apps because
clearly we use lots of other apps.
We use other apps, and I want it to shoot like these reminder things.
Change my lineup, pull out Shab, and put in Cam Newton.
Yeah, I want it to do things like that. I want it to, because now I have to integrate this to-do manager thing into my life if I want to use Siri in that way where I already have a to-do manager, right?
The dictation is cool. The natural language stuff is supposed to be incredible.
It looked great.
I'm not excited for it on the phone.
Why?
Because I look at my computer that I spend more time talking to or computing with or communicating with, and I think of the ways of, or the iPad, like it's not on the iPad yet. I'm more excited for it to go to other products. Like, I get it, on the phone it's great. I've used the, play this song by, call...
I've never done it.
Call Justin Home. I've done those.
Ever.
They're okay. They work. They're kind of interesting. But again, you kind of either have to bring the phone up to your face to say it or do it through the thing. So it's kind of like a little bit... Whatever.
I've already started thinking about all the things I'm going to stop having to do and allow Siri to do for me, which I'm excited about.
That will be exciting. I'm going to train everybody I know how to use it, because I think this is the thing that I said this before, or I said to someone about, my wife. Boy, this is a wife and girlfriend
it is.
Podcast. But we'll be driving somewhere, and I have GPS in my car. We actually call her Sasha. You know this.
I do. I love Sasha.
And we love Sasha. But Sasha doesn't know about traffic. But the iPhone knows about traffic. So because I don't want to pull out my phone and look at traffic while I'm driving, because that would be unsafe, and I'm a very safe driver.
I would like to differ.
Factually correct.
Incorrect.
Factually correct.
Incorrect.
And so I say to my wife, who also has an iPhone, could you please pull up the traffic and find out if there's traffic coming up on 95, whatever. And almost every time she goes, what the? And so I'm happy if I can teach her to use Siri, rely upon it. Then she will naturally pick up that phone and go, is there traffic around us? And then it just takes a lot of stuff off of me. So I'm like, my excitement is not for me as a user, because I'm pretty much a power user, pretty much. And I'm more excited for other people learning to use it, and so not having to ask me how to do stuff. How do I use a task? Well, have you tried Siri? Just like we used to try to do a search. I want Siri to be the new search.
So, aside from Siri, there wasn't much else that was new or groundbreaking.
Well, a couple
because we sort of knew all this. We saw that keynote a couple months back, where they announced iCloud and where they sort of showed iOS 5.
Yep. 2 new things in iOS 5: Friends and Family Finder.
Okay.
That was new, which is basically a glimpse.
Oh, right.
Takeoff. And the new iCard app.
The card app. Which, whatever.
Yeah.
I could care less.
I kind of like it because I always go between sending an e-card and sending a physical card. I feel like this is not a handwritten physical card, but it's as close as you're going to get without handwriting it yourself. If I could do that from my phone,
I could care less about that thing. I might do it for happy birthday cards because I never get people cards.
Here we go. And then it sends you, and then when they get it, because it gets delivered, it sends you a little pop-up.
I could care less about that. I'm trusting the mail. The mail's been around for hundreds of years. It knows what it does. Mail gets things to people.
Sort of. Let's talk about a little bit. Let's go into the cloud computing space. They reshowed cloud computing. They reshowed iCloud. iCloud is coming out. So all this stuff is coming out the 12th and the 14th. You can pre-order the phones
a week from now
on Friday morning. Someone already put on my Facebook, "Are you going to wake up at 3 o'clock in the morning and order?" I said, "No, I'll order at 5:30. I'm going to go crazy. I'm going to wait 2 hours. I'm actually going to wake up when I wake up."
You're nuts.
But iCloud, I think, iCloud is looking better and better. The one thing that came from iCloud that had not been talked about, which I think our listeners will be interested in, streaming. So iTunes Match, when you upload your stuff, all your CDs, now this is going to differ between whether you bought it or what it looks like from me and everything I've read. If you bought it, you can download it again to any device, and we know that works. It works now. It's great. If you upload it through iTunes Match, you can stream anything. And I think that's a licensing thing, right? Clearly, there's a different license between the two, but that's great, because that says to me, great, I don't really want to download, the song that I was
downloading the songs over and over again is annoying, because I don't want it on my device. I just want to listen to it now. What was interesting also was Siri can do that for you.
Right.
Siri knows that you have this song somewhere in your collection, whether it's on your device or not. I can go get it for you.
Right, and then stream it for
That's
you.
pretty cool.
The whole thing is becoming very cool. Anyway, it's all coming soon. We'll talk about it more when it comes out.
Yeah, when we get our hands on it, we'll play with it. Right. We'll love it.
I'll
Guaranteed
have one.
5-star review.
I'll have one. But let's talk some other non-Apple related stuff.
All right.
Tell me about this next story, because I think you read up more on it than I did.
I did. So there was a bunch of... Well, this is from Oracle Open World.
Okay.
Mark Benioff was supposed to be a keynote speaker or have a... I don't know if I want to call it a keynote speaker, but have a session or a time slot to speak, just like he did last year,
right?
Famously, when he got on stage and called Oracle's cloud Exadata solution a false cloud, because clouds don't come in boxes, right?
Right.
And then Larry Ellison had his whole retort, where he talked about Salesforce not being the true cloud, and it's not being secure because data's commingled, and not having good virtualization or good, fallback strategy for, if it's down, everyone's down.
Right.
Right. And there's no good fault tolerance there. Mark was invited back to speak this year.
Right.
And then was canceled. At the last minute. They basically said, no, you can't do this. Maybe you can do it some other time. And he couldn't make it that other time. He had already said, no, that's the time I allocated. I'm going to be somewhere else.
Right.
So he held a impromptu, I don't want to call it a press conference, but an impromptu speech. Speech off at the St. Regis Hotel, which is nearby.
Right across the street.
And did his whole spiel and essentially was, did the whole false cloud, we are the cloud. It's an interesting thing because Oracle, or Larry being such a big investor in Salesforce, then Salesforce technology
running on
Oracle. It's a weird relationship.
Right.
It's very odd the way that these two go at each other publicly. I wonder if this is more of a publicity thing than it is a real issue between the two, because it's a page right out of the book of Behind the Cloud. It's like,
pick a fight,
be disruptive, pick a fight, and go to their conference and show them up. Own that conference. Who cares if it's yours? It's yours.
It definitely gets you news cycles. It's starting to remind me a little bit of East Coast, West Coast rappers.
Ooh.
Right?
Who's Biggie?
Right. Well,
Benioff's Biggie.
Benioff's Biggie. But it's starting to remind me of that a little bit, where it's like you write the songs, you go back and forth. Really, it benefits everybody because it gets you in the news cycles.
Unless you get shot.
Well, then, that certainly doesn't benefit anybody. I think it's interesting. I think it's probably being made. If I were Benioff, I probably wouldn't have done the press conference with a mini thing. I would have said, I would have coughed a lot.
You would have coughed on him?
I would have said, hey, listen, okay, fine, I'm out. And I maybe just said, great, I won't do it. It seems a little bit like a tantrum to say, well, I'm going to throw a thing right across the street from you. And I don't know. Sometimes I think that his investors must feel like, really? Do you have to do that? Can't you just
do you have to be the little guy in this? Can't you
eventually,
step up?
I think going back to our Apple conversation, it's the same sort of thing. Apple has that same problem, is like, we're the little guys. Well, no, you're not. You're dominating like 17 categories. Also interesting, 10-year anniversary for the iPod.
You just throw that out there.
I'm just throwing it out there. Well, because it was in the keynote.
It was in the keynote.
It's interesting because when
they showed all the iPods, they didn't show the iPod Classic.
No, they didn't. It's still for sale. I think, talk about something that literally changed the way, considering that everything since then has been based on it, kind of iPhone was sort of an iPod with this, and everything's sort of kind of been based on it. I just remember where I was. I was sitting at an off-site retreat with a BlackBerry that only got really just text, and I had my girlfriend at the time, now wife, and another buddy emailing me when the announcement, because I knew it was an announcement, I didn't know what it was about music, and they emailed me like what it was, because I couldn't get it because I was at this offsite up in Connecticut or New York, and I was working at that big company, and I remember getting it and going, oh my god, I want one of these. And my wife, who was emailing, or my girlfriend was emailing at the same time, said, I want one too. And I thought, wow, she's sucked in. She's just reading this off a website, and she wants one of these things. I did end up buying two, and I have basically had to keep her in, jewels and iPods since. Just kind of a bummer. Should never have gotten her one.
No.
All right, so
big mistake.
Last thing, and then we'll wrap it up with a CloudFocus app pick of the week. Is Winter 12's coming this weekend.
It is.
And so we talked a little bit what you're excited about. What's the one thing that you're like you're going to go in on Saturday and just check? Your first thing.
Customer groups.
Customer groups?
That's what I want. I don't know if it's going to be there because these release notes have changed quite a few times.
I went and downloaded today because a client asked for a feature that's actually coming out. I went and looked at the release notes twice more. In the ones I could find on their website, it was still there, but I can't find the feature in the sandbox, which is that you can clone if you don't have manage view, and maybe that's the reason is because I have the permission. It still doesn't make any sense. It should still be there even if I have the permission. But if you don't have the permission to manage public lists, you can still clone one. So I couldn't find it. A customer really was asking for it today, and I was fumbling around a way to get around it. So
customer groups is what I'm most interested in.
I mean, the social contacts I haven't seen yet.
I've played with them a little. I was a little upset about them, but
I will say I used the Twitter one that we have installed, App Exchange,
the Salesforce social Salesforce
for a new client. I was putting in their contact information. I'm like, let's just see. Found both of them.
Yeah,
found both
of them
quickly.
It works.
I still feel like it's a little strange that if I tweeted them right from there, I'd be like, I found you.
Well, no, if you tweet them from there, it'll tweet them from a different account that you don't want to tweet them from.
I know. So, anyway, so let's go to our CloudFocus app pick of the week.
All right.
On a somber CloudFocus Weekly.
All right,
So pick something somber.
This is not somber. I'm excited about this. So the nonprofit starter pack from Salesforce.
Yes.
While not really an app, although it is, because you can install it in separate packages. You can find them if you go look for them on the developer.salesforce.com website. Has been revamped, and it's a whole lot better than it ever was. There are a lot of settings screens now for different types of roll-ups, like households. You can sort of finagle through just the user interface how you want the householding logic, as well as the naming conventions, opportunity roll-ups or donation roll-ups to different contacts and households.
Nice.
You can do that. You can set up your affiliation settings through the UI. You can define user-defined roll-up fields. They actually created a user interface for a not-so-savvy person to create a roll-up summary field. Like, they put another UI on top of it. It's interesting.
Nice.
They finally included a payment object as part of the standard nonprofit starter pack. You, as a nonprofit consultant or person who sets up not-for-profits for fundraising and development, the first thing you do is go in and create a payment object. You need a payment object. It's built in with settings.
Nice.
Auto-created, auto-market paid, auto-do this, auto-do that. Very nice. Kudos to, I believe it's Steve Anderson at the foundation for putting some effort into upgrading the new organization's contacts with the payments, affiliations, all that stuff.
And I think it's open source.
Not so much.
I think the packages are open source themselves.
Not so much.
Really?
Really.
Because I'm pretty sure when I went to install them a while back, he pointed me a bunch of Google.
You might be able to find some stuff in the Google code share, but when you
have
go
to have a Salesforce account to do it, so it's not.
Yeah, but when you go to, like, as a non-for-profit, when you set up your org the first time, you're essentially signing up for a 30-day free trial, and then they provision the org after you get your donation of 10 free licenses.
Right.
And when you set up that 30-day free trial, you go through a wizard, and one of the screens is, what do you want to set up? Nonprofit Starter Pack or Enterprise Edition? And you choose.
Right.
When you choose, it sets up your org. It installs all the packages. You can't see the code.
I think that's a wizard to set you through it. I think all the pieces of it, though, are open source and good. Well, we'll put this as
maybe
a side
if you could go grab, like, the affiliations package. I know we actually use the affiliations package in our org because it's a nice add-on feature. We'll take a look.
We'll take a look.
That's my pick.
We'll bet
the starter pack. You won't use it free if you're interested in some of those things that I mentioned. Maybe you could go grab the individual packages. If you're a nonprofit who's doing fundraising, it works.
Right. And you might want to just look at it in a test org or something if you can get
if you're a partner, you can create a nonprofit starter pack org to play with.
Because you might have some features you might want to bring over to the
and you
profit
totally
side.
can.
All right. Well, mine is maybe I'm got open source on the mind. This was going to be one of my blog posts, but since it's sort of coming and going, it's getting too far away from when it was released. I thought I'd talk about it quickly, which is Plone 4.1. It's an open source web content management system. You've heard of Django. You've heard of Joomla is another one. Drupal is another. This is a old one. Actually, it's been around for I think over 10 years now. I've been using it for probably as long as it's been around. It's based on Python, but basically it's a new version, and they put out a new version. Now they're going to an every 6-month release cycle, which is interesting as an open source thing to do that as every 6 months. It's got a lot of new features. You can go to plone.org and read up about it. I just sort of like to bring it up. I'd also like to bring it up for Salesforce people because they have a lot of nice Salesforce integrations. They have auth integrations. They have content integrations. Someone just released a way to publish content from Salesforce content into Plone. So there's lots of great stuff, and it's free, so a lot of nonprofits use it. So on your nonprofit, you can do a lot of that web stuff that's sort of harder to do, like the login stuff, but you can do it with Plone, but Salesforce being the back end to your auth.
Like an application.
Yeah, so...
If you need to fill out an application, and you can submit stuff into Salesforce.
And we've done that work for nonprofits here. So anyway, Plone 4.1, free. Free as in beer, because it's open source, available at plone.org.
Did you mention arkusinc.com is on Plone?
Arkusinc.com is on Plone. So when you go to blog.arkusinc.com to read up on the blog post, it's on Plone. Go ahead, take a look. It's actually on Plone 41, so I did that 2 weeks ago. Follow the company at Twitter, Arkus Inc. I'm at Jason M. Atwood on Twitter, and Justin here is at Just Edelstein. We're on Facebook, facebook.com/Arkus Inc., and we're in iTunes. Subscribe by iTunes for the podcast. Until next week, on again a very somber, sort of sad CloudFocus, but hopefully on a forward-thinking way. Enjoy those cloudy days, and we'll see you next week. Bye.